Welcome to this video on how I restored my 1965 Lionel train set. We will be covering four main areas of the restoration process. The first was to clean the rusty tracks, the second was get the old locomotive running, the third was repairing the track switchers, and the fourth was making a transportable wood mounting. The last time this train ran was back in 1998. Back then I got in trouble with my wife because the rusty tracks stained the carpeting in our house. So I googled and checked YouTube and found out the best way to clean the old rusty track was using a Scotch pad or steel wool and WD-40. At this point my old 1965 locomotive would not run properly yet, but I did have a good running locomotive from the 1980s. I used that to make sure, or to tell when the tracks were clean enough. Surprisingly, my original 1965 transformer still worked properly. Using a VOM meter, I found that it puts out about 14 volts DC, and it's rated at 45 watts. My old 1965 Lionel locomotive acted like it wanted to run electrically, but it could not keep going by itself. So I googled it and YouTubed it and found various recommendations for lubing the gears with either grease or oil. I used 3-in-1 oil, but that really didn't make any difference. The next recommendation I found was to disassemble the locomotive and clean the brushes with alcohol and a swab. And the instructions said to disassemble it in a plastic bag to catch the two small brushes if they fly out. Well, my brushes did not fly out. They were kind of stuck in their holders, so I pulled out with my fingers, cleaned with alcohol, reassembled, and still did not work. I then took the good 1980s locomotive and rotated the wheels with my thumbs with the locomotive upside down, and I noticed that the old 1980s one did not have much friction. When I did the same thing to my 1965 locomotive, I had very high friction. So I did some visual inspection and found the horizontal linkage in the front of the locomotive was bent on one side. I straightened that out with my fingers, and the old locomotive started to run. Once I got the old locomotive running, the next thing was to fix the two track switchers. One of them still worked okay. The switchers were actually made by Marx, not Lionel. On the other one, though, when I took the cover off, the wires from the coil to the terminals was broken. And it's extremely thin gauge wire. So I soldered the thin wires to some copper washers and hoping that connection will last longer inside the switcher. Then I found out that the control box doesn't work unless you have bigger gauge wire, like 16 gauge. So I installed that also. I got both of them working. The last problem I had was now I had the train running. The track would pull apart as the train goes around the corners. These tracks will always be rusty, and I run the risk of staining the carpet. So I decided, and I wanted a transportable setup also, so I decided to make a wood underlayment for the track as shown in the photo above. I will make it so you can take it apart in pieces. Here's a photo showing how I made the wood track bed for the railroad in my shop. I used Craig pocket screws to attach each of the separate pieces of wood track or wood underbed. Don't know the best name for that. And then here's the finished switcher end of the track. I brainstormed quite a few different concepts for how to make the four sections of the wood track be able to be connected and disconnected for transport. And about the simplest idea I could come up with was the simple hook shown in the drawing here, and they're similar to what we use on old porch screen doors, and it should work pretty good to assemble and disassemble the track. And here's a photo showing the old steel Lionel train tracks, which I screwed down to the gray wooden bed to hold them. This photo shows all of the gray wood bed that I made for the entire train set. This photo shows the switcher end of the track with a transformer and a switcher and one of the actual switches on the track. Now let's see the train in action. Many thanks for watching this video. I hope my experience getting my old 1965 Lionel train set running will be helpful to you if you're trying to get your old Lionel to run again. Thank you.